There is a specific type of consistency that stops looking like discipline and starts looking like a malfunction. You've probably seen it in someone else and felt a strange mix of admiration and genuine unease. They do not just show up when they are motivated. They do not just show up when the conditions are perfect. They show up with a mechanical, inevitable rhythm that makes them seem less like a human being and more like a force of nature. While you are negotiating with your alarm clock, they have already finished. While you are waiting for the right time to start, they are lapping you for the third time. And the common reaction to seeing this level of output is to assume that this person is suffering. We tell ourselves that they must be miserable, robotic, or devoid of joy, because that excuses our own inability to keep a promise to ourselves. But here is the part that is actually terrifying. They are not miserable. They are not using more willpower than you. In fact, they are using significantly less. There is an ancient concept in Japanese Zen practice called gyoji. It is often translated simply as continuous practice, but a more accurate translation would be the circle of effort that sustains itself. It is the idea that the practice carries you rather than you carrying the practice. Most of us view discipline as a heavy weight we have to lift every single day. Gyoji suggests that once the wheel is turning, the momentum makes the weight weightless. And once you understand the psychological architecture behind this, you will realize that you have been playing the game of habits completely wrong. You have been trying to win a war against your own brain, using ammunition that runs out after 3 days, while the people you envy have simply removed the war altogether. To understand how this works in a practical modern context, we have to look at the anatomy of failure. Let's look at a case study of a programmer named Raphael. He fits the profile of almost everyone watching this video. He was intelligent, capable in his career, and genuinely desperate to change his life. But he had a fatal flaw that you will likely recognize in your own behavior. He was a chronic starter. He would begin a gym routine on Monday with 100% intensity. By Wednesday, the intensity dropped to 80%. By Friday, he was negotiating with himself, and by Sunday, the habit was dead, buried under a pile of excuses about how he would start fresh next week. Raphael tried everything the self-help industry sold him. He bought the expensive journals. He downloaded the tracking apps with the colorful streaks. He promised himself rewards. Nothing worked for more than 2 weeks. He failed because he was fighting a battle against his own biology, and he was using a weapon that humans are notoriously bad at wielding. He was using decision-making. Every single day, he woke up and asked himself a question. Do I feel like doing this today? And the moment you ask that question, you have already lost. The monks who practice gyoji never ask that question. At the Eihiji temple in Japan, the wake-up bell has rung at 3:30 in the morning every single day for nearly 800 years. It does not matter if it is snowing. It does not matter if the monk is tired. It does not matter if they went to bed late. The bell rings and the body moves. There is no gap between the stimulus and the response where a negotiation can take place. And this is the first uncomfortable truth about extreme discipline. It requires you to kill the part of yourself that thinks it has a vote. You see, your brain categorizes every commitment you make into 2 distinct boxes. The first box is reversible. These are the things you say you will do, but deep down you know there is an escape hatch. You say you will go for a run, but if it rains, you won't. You say you will read, but if you are tired, you will skip it. The second box is irreversible. These are things like picking up your child from school or showing up to a job that pays your rent. You do not negotiate these things. You do not check the weather report before deciding if you are going to feed your dog. You just do it, because the alternative does not exist in your reality. The secret of the monks, and the secret of that scary person you know, is that they have moved their personal habits from the reversible box to the irreversible box. But how do you actually do that without moving into a monastery? Neuroscience gives us a clue, and it is aggressive. A leading researcher in behavioral psychology found that the human brain interprets a loss of social status as a survival threat. For our ancestors, being cast out of the tribe meant death. We are hardwired to avoid public shame at all costs. Raphael used this ancient fear to hack his modern laziness. He realized that private promises are worthless because the only witness is you, and you are very easy to forgive. So he stopped making private promises. He wrote a contract. He stated, "I am a person who meditates for 20 minutes every day at 5 in the morning for 90 consecutive days." He didn't just write it in a journal. He posted it on social media. He emailed it to his colleagues. He told his partner. He created a blast radius of social accountability. His girlfriend told him he was being dramatic. His coworkers made jokes about it. But that reaction was exactly what he needed. He had weaponized his own ego. The next morning, when the alarm went off at 5, his brain started its usual routine. It whispered, "Just sleep 10 more minutes. You are tired. It's cold." But then, a new circuit fired. The image of having to go back to his friends and admit he quit after 24 hours was more painful than the cold floor. He didn't get up because he was motivated. He got up because the pain of staying in bed had finally become greater than the pain of discipline. But this brings us to the second trap, and this is
where the advice you usually hear starts to crumble. We are told that if we just push hard enough, eventually it becomes easy. That is a half-truth. The public declaration got Raphael out of bed, but it didn't make the process smooth. He was still fighting a war every morning. He was awake, but he was exhausted, resentful, and draining his mental battery before the sun even came up. He was suffering from something called decision fatigue. You might not realize it, but you have a limited amount of decision-making energy each day. Every time you decide what to wear, what to eat, or when to do your work, you burn a little bit of that fuel. Raphael was burning all his fuel just figuring out the logistics. Should he meditate before coffee or after? Should he do it in the living room or the bedroom? Every variable was a leak in his energy tank. This leads to the second pillar of Gyoji, non-negotiable timing. The monks do not wake up at 3:30 because they love the number. They wake up at 3:30 because it removes the variable of time. If you do not have a set time, you are forced to make a decision every single day. You spend your morning looking for a slot where the habit fits. You are waiting for the perfect moment, but the perfect moment never comes. Raphael stopped trying to find time and started claiming it. He chose 5 in the morning. Not because he was a member of the hustle culture who wanted to brag about waking up early, but because at 5 in the morning, the world is dead. There are no emails. There are no text messages. There are no requests from his boss. It is a vacuum. By placing his habit in this vacuum, he protected it from the chaos of the day. The first week was absolute hell. His body rebelled. His circadian rhythm was screaming. This is the part where most people quit because they think something is wrong. They think, if this was meant to be, it wouldn't feel this bad. But the body is a machine that loves homeostasis. It loves keeping
things exactly the way they are. When you try to change a pattern, your body views it as an attack. Fighting through that resistance isn't a sign that it's working, it's the price of entry. By the second week, however, the strangest thing happened. Raphael woke up 2 minutes before his alarm. His body had realized that the negotiation was over. It stopped fighting the timeline and started preparing for it. On day 14, his feet hit the floor before his conscious mind even booted up. There was no thought process. There was no "should I?" There was just the stimulus of the time and the response of the movement. He had solved the when, but he had not solved the what. And this is the subtle mistake that prevents people from reaching that scary level of elite performance. Raphael had the time block secured, but he kept changing what he did inside of it. Some days he meditated, some days he read a book, some days he did push-ups. He told himself he was keeping it fresh. He told himself that variety would prevent boredom. This sounds logical until you look closer at how habits are actually encoded in the basal ganglia of the brain. Variety is the enemy of automation. Every time you change the routine, you force your brain to engage the prefrontal cortex, the conscious, thinking part of your brain. You have to decide what to do next. You have to set up different equipment. You have to get into a different headspace. That friction is small, but it is cumulative. The Zen masters insist on ritual not because they are boring, but because ritual eliminates friction. If you do the exact same thing, in the exact same order, in the exact same spot every single day, the behavior stops being a choice and starts being a script. Your body simply acts out the script. Raphael realized he was still negotiating the details, so he locked it down. No more variety, no more seeing how I feel. 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of reading, same order, same timer.
Same corner of the room. He committed to doing this identical sequence for 90 days. This is known in Zen practice as an ongo, a period of intense, secluded training. When he told his friends about this, they told him he was turning into a robot. They said he was losing his spontaneity. This is a common defense mechanism from people who are addicted to their own lack of structure. They confuse chaos with freedom. But Raphael was beginning to see that real freedom is not having to think about what you are supposed to do. Real freedom is having the important things on autopilot so that your mind is free to focus on what actually matters. The third week of this rigid structure brought a new kind of mental agony: boredom. His brain started screaming for novelty. It said, "This is stupid. You are not learning anything. Let's switch it up." This is the boredom barrier. It is the filter that separates the amateurs from the masters. The amateur quits when the excitement fades. The master realizes that boredom is just another sensation to be observed, not a command to be obeyed. Raphael kept going. And then, somewhere around week 6, the noise stopped. He would finish his push-ups and realize he didn't even remember starting them. He would finish his meditation and feel like he had just sat down. The friction was gone. The internal war was over. He had reached the state that the monks call acting without acting. But just as he settled into this rhythm, reality threw a curveball that no amount of meditation could prevent. Life happened. On day 35, he got the flu. On day 40, he had to travel for a business conference. This is the moment that usually kills a streak. We have this fragile idea that for a habit to count, the conditions must be perfect. If we are sick, we get a pass. If we are traveling, we get a pass. But Gyoji demands something that sounds unreasonable to the modern ear. It demands that the practice continues, no matter what. This does not mean you destroy your body when you are sick. It means you modify the intensity, but you never, ever break the continuity. The river might shrink to a trickle during a drought, but it never stops flowing. If it stops, it becomes a pond, and ponds become stagnant. Raphael was standing in a hotel room at 4 in the morning, exhausted, with a full day of meetings ahead of him. His brain offered him the perfect excuse. Just skip today. You've been so good, one day won't hurt. This is the most dangerous sentence in the English language. One day hurts everything, because one day breaks the seal on your integrity. He looked at the floor. He knew that if he skipped this, the reversible box would open up again. The negotiation would restart. So he made a decision that would seem insane to a normal person. He got down on the hotel floor. He didn't do his full workout. He did a fraction of it, but he did it. He kept the thread unbroken. And this is where the philosophy shifts from simple habit building to something much darker and much more powerful. It stops being about what you do and starts being about who you are. However, the world is chaotic, and simply having a routine isn't enough when chaos strikes. You need a system for disaster. Most people fail not because they lack discipline, but because they lack a plan for when things go wrong. They rely on their ability to improvise in the moment, but when you are stressed, tired, or running late, your ability to improvise collapses. You will always choose the path of least resistance. To reach the level of discipline that scares people, you cannot rely on improvisation. You need what are called presolutions. This is the part of the system that makes you bulletproof, and it is the part that almost nobody talks about. Think about the last time you broke a promise to yourself. It probably wasn't on a perfect Tuesday morning when you were well-rested and motivated. It was almost certainly when something unexpected hit you.
Your car broke down, your boss demanded overtime, or a family emergency drained your emotional reserves. In that moment of chaos, your brain had to make a choice: deal with the crisis or maintain the habit. And because the brain is an energy-conserving machine, it will always choose to drop the habit to deal with the crisis. This is where the amateur fails. The amateur relies on their ability to make good decisions under stress. The master knows that making decisions under stress is a biological impossibility for most people, so they make the decisions beforehand. Raphael sat down and audited his life. He looked at every single reason he had quit in the past 10 years. He listed them out: illness, travel, bad weather, arguments with his partner, and sheer exhaustion. Then, next to each one, he wrote a specific if-then protocol. This is the essence of a pre-solution. It is a decision made when you are calm to be executed when you are panicked. He wrote, if I am sick and cannot do 20 push-ups, I will do 2 push-ups on my knees. If I am traveling and have no space, I will meditate sitting on the edge of the bed for 5 minutes instead of 10. If I had a fight with my girlfriend and I am angry, I will read 1 page of the book instead of a chapter. He created what is known in systems engineering as a fail-safe mode. The goal was no longer to have a perfect workout every day. The goal was to never let the binary code of his day flip to 0. As long as he did something, the streak remained alive. The identity remained intact. This completely changed the texture of his mornings. When obstacles appeared, he didn't panic. He didn't waste energy wondering if he should take a day off. He simply looked at the situation, categorized it, and executed the pre-written protocol. It was mechanical, it was emotionless, and it was incredibly effective. By removing the emotional weight of the decision, he removed the possibility of guilt. He wasn't skipping, he was simply
Shifting gears. As he crossed day 60, something profound began to shift in his psychology. The practice was no longer something he did, it was something he was. The neural pathways in his brain had myelinated to the point where the behavior was as automatic as brushing his teeth. And this is where the scary part comes in. This is where other people start to look at you differently. Friends started commenting on his intensity. They said he was becoming boring. They said he was too rigid. One night at a dinner party, someone offered him a drink that would have ruined his 5 a.m. wake-up. He declined without hesitating. The host pressed him, saying, "Come on, live a little. You need balance." Raphael looked at him and realized they were speaking different languages. To the host, living a little meant escaping reality for a few hours. To Raphael, living meant having total control over his reality. He realized that when people tell you to have balance, they are often asking you to validate their lack of discipline. When they see someone who operates without excuses, it holds up a mirror to their own compromises. It makes them uncomfortable. They want you to break your streak so they can feel better about never starting theirs. But Raphael didn't break. He didn't preach. He just quietly continued. And that quiet continuity commands a level of respect that loud motivation never will. By day 90, the transformation was complete. Raphael had not just built a habit, he had built a new operating system. He walked differently. He spoke with more precision. The brain fog that had plagued him for years was gone, replaced by a sharp predatory focus. He realized that the discipline hadn't restricted his freedom, it had created it. Because his mornings were conquered, his days were his own. Because he trusted himself to keep small promises, he started taking bigger risks in his career. He knew that if he said he would do something, it was already done. There was no
gap between his word and his reality. This is the ultimate promise of Gyoji. It is not about becoming a monk. It is about closing the gap between who you want to be and who you are. But there is a final warning that must accompany this level of discipline, one that most success stories leave out. When you reach this level of consistency, you will feel a certain degree of isolation. You are operating on a frequency that most people do not understand. You will find it harder to tolerate complaints from people who refuse to change. You will find it harder to engage in gossip or activities that simply kill time. You might lose some friends who preferred the old, unreliable version of you. This is the cost of entry. You have to decide if you are willing to pay it. Most people want the prize, but they don't want the process. They want the physique, the bank account, and the peace of mind, but they want to keep their excuses, their sleeping in, and their emotional negotiations. You cannot have both. The scary level of discipline requires a sacrifice. It requires you to sacrifice the comfort of being a victim to your own moods. So, how do you begin this today? You do not start by trying to wake up at 3:30 a.m. You do not start by trying to overhaul your entire life in 24 hours. That is the path to burnout. You start by picking one thing, just one. Something small enough that you can do it on your worst day, but significant enough that it changes your identity. Maybe it is drinking a glass of water the moment you wake up. Maybe it is doing 5 push-ups. Maybe it is reading 1 single page. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you move it from the reversible box to the irreversible box. You make a public declaration. You set a specific time. You pre-solve the obstacles. And then you let the circle of effort take over. There will be days when you want to quit. There will be days when it feels pointless. There will be days when the world tries to drag. You back down to average. On those days, remember the bell at the temple. It rings whether they are happy or sad. It rings whether it is war or peace. The bell rings, and the monks move. Be the bell, be the movement, and watch as the world moves out of your way. If you are ready to stop negotiating with yourself and start building the kind of consistency that changes everything, I want you to do one thing right now. Do not just close this video and scroll to the next dopamine hit. Take a piece of paper. Write down your one non-negotiable habit. Write down the time. And write down the punishment for missing it. Make it real. Because the only thing standing between you and the person you want to become is the lie that you can start tomorrow. Tomorrow is a fantasy you only have now.